Hello, my name is Malcolm Woodfield, and I lead the higher education and research practice at SAP. Here today with some of our customers to talk about some of the critical trends, drivers, focus areas that universities are facing today, particularly, of course, in light of the COVID crisis, both responding to it and planning for the post-COVID environment. So I posed some questions to our customers and invited them to discuss which of these were most pressing for them, or if there are completely different ones, obviously to focus on those. And I asked them about three or four areas. One, the whole area of student engagement and student success, obviously in light of the move to online learning. But also some of the more technical aspects of that, for example, how to carry out assessment of student success, how to proctor exams and that kind of thing. So some technical issues, but also some that obviously associated business questions. I also asked about what I call financial resilience, right? Or because universities with falling enrollments, falling tax base, and so on, have really been affected financially, and so I think a major question, both currently and going forward, is how to manage that, how to optimize resources, and so on. Thirdly, how to maintain the university reputation, which depends, for example, on student success, also depends on research output. Research has been very difficult, obviously, to continue. You can't set up a lab in your basement and work from home. So that whole question of how do you maintain, if you like, the brand, I think is a very critical strategic question, maybe not a day-to-day question, but a strategic issue. And on the same strategic side, how do you maintain your competitive difference between other institutions? Are you having to really rethink your, if you like, business model, rethink your offerings, your curriculum, your market, so to speak, to differentiate yourself? So, and that is obviously very closely aligned with reputation. So those are four kind of areas that I think what I'm seeing are very critical. And then secondly, I posed the question of the digital journey. Right now, universities globally have really embarked on the journey to digitization many years ago, digitizing courseware, assets, libraries, and so on, digitizing the back office, which is what we manage, so to speak. So processes like procurement and so on have been to a great extent digitized. That's really just the beginning. And there are two areas I think that are of particular interest. One is the increasing use of automation, of intelligent technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on, that build on the digital platform, right? You have to have that digitization in place. You have to have that data available. Machine learning doesn't work, as it were, without data. Data drives that and fuels it. And secondly, thinking again, going back to my first questions, the new business model, right? Taking again that digital platform, which is now very flexible, highly integrated. That's an opportunity to now think about: are we doing business in the best way? Are we using best business practices? Should we be looking at other industries? Retail, for example, has become quite influential in higher education, and so on. So the other, then my second area there of question was, and so I invite the panel to give us their perspective on the trends and challenges they're facing and the solutions that they're looking for or implementing. So maybe first off, Nishant from University of Mississippi, maybe you could give us your perspective.
Malcolm, thank you for the opportunity. I serve as the Chief Information Officer for the University of Mississippi, and I'll say what the things you've covered are very relevant, more so in this day and age than it has been in the past. And while they've been pertinent to our institution, the priority has shifted quite drastically due to the pandemic. if I can address the items you brought up one at a time, I'll chat about student success for a brief moment, and I'll say from a persistence perspective, we do fairly well. We're about an 87% persistence rate and retention rate, so that is a good measure. We continuously work to improve it. There's the aspect of rate of completion and engagement that you mentioned, and while those do play in persistence, improving engagement will also improve rate of graduation, which is a critical measure, and then also the path to graduation. Those are things that we continuously work toward to help improve our students' timeline for graduation, because many students attend an institution and they're driven and distracted by many of the things that they haven't had to deal with before. Social events, for example, or other student organizations that pull them in, and so they adjust their course load to accommodate these additional extracurricular activities, and 4 years later they wonder why they haven't been able to graduate, right? And so those are things that we're building to help assist them in their path to graduation, and model so that they can so-called simulate their path if they were to stay on their current program, switch programs, solutions that we've used from SAP, such as degree audit solutions. From a financial perspective, I'll say we're a little bit on a downward trend for enrollment over the past 2 to 3 years, and that's something we're working hard to change. There are leadership adjustments we're making, product adjustments that we're making, and these certainly didn't make it easier when this came about. I'll say too, from a reputation and affordability perspective, we're doing well on that side of it. We're ranked in the top 50 institutions, public institutions, for best value universities. And that's a good metric. That means we have a good program. We're on the lower side of the cost spectrum, and you get a good value when you leave because we're a recognized institution. The components of how students are evolving and what they expect from the university is something that we need to keep pace with. It's an aspect of students transition every 4 to 5 years. You have a new, completely new set of students, because about 20% of your students cycle in every year. However, your faculty and staff stay the same, right? Mostly unchanged. And the behaviors have to adjust with this evolving student profile. And when you mentioned external competition, so this is a new challenge in a different way. So external competition's always been there from an institutional perspective. However, in this pandemic, guess what? We're all challenged in new ways, and we've all converted our programs to be online, hybrid, remote learning, all of these new mediums that allow students to be place-bound and still attend class. What does that mean? That means now other states are reaching to our local students that in the past they weren't as interested in, because they had local resources and were able to attract students from nearby. For us, we're now not only fighting for our in-state students, now we also are competing for out-of-state in a different way, because we'd like to attract the students here for the programs that they choose to attend, and at the same time, give them a good value and make it so it's feasible and they have a good experience through it. But how do you do that? That's the piece that every university is trying to figure out to do well. And unfortunately, time is not on our side for changes like that.
I mean, one thing I'm seeing on the student engagement side, and measuring value or the experience, is institutions are starting to get very granular about this. So they're starting to measure not just the student experience broadly, but also, you know, what's your experience of the admissions process? What's your experience of the financial aid process? What's your experience of the athletics program? What's your experience of the campus and student services? And then, of course, then taking that data and, you know, looking at how to improve those particular areas, right? And then, you know, looking at, again, as I said, best business practices. How do other universities do this? How do other countries do this? And really kind of getting down to the details, the nitty gritty of the experience, really breaking it down into really a series of experiences.
I will say the change in some of the things that have affected us drastically are something that the University of Mississippi is well known for is its football team. And in this scenario, we're not able to have the same level of attendance. We're not allowed to have tailgates. Tailgates were a big attraction. At peak, we'd have 80,000 to 100,000 people on our campus attending tailgates, right? Now that's zero. Those are factors that we're well known for, and we're not able to leverage to the same degree. So we have to creatively figure out how we approach those and still have the same outcome as we did before. So it's a significant challenge. The other piece you mentioned is the measurement of now silos of activities across our campus. And that's because of the availability of data, right? Solutions like the HANA databases that can process information so rapidly allow for ingesting of information, huge amounts of information, to provide reports and data so that people can act on it. And so as a result, they're able to silo the things that they want to focus on and provide precise information to either drive outcomes or a report format of other sorts. I mean, in the things that we've had to do to change, right? One of the things when you traverse our campus, you'll see our food delivery robots, which weren't a thing before. And now you see dozens of them around our campus. You hit a stop sign and not only are vehicles stopped, there are robots stopped at the stop sign too, waiting to cross the sidewalk so they can get their food from wherever the student may have made a request and purchase to over to the student. So and it delivers everything from sandwiches to Chinese to Starbucks coffee. So we're all evolving in different ways.
That's a very striking example, and a great example of the intelligent campus, right? So Nishant, you're on a similar kind of journey, the S4 journey. How, I know you moved your ECC environment onto the business suite, as we called it, onto HANA. We call that a suite on HANA strategy. One of our more transparent terms, I think. How are you experiencing? Where are you on that journey, Nishant, at Ole Miss?
At the end of last year, we started our conversations around the S4HANA project. And as you can imagine, with the pandemic, which started earlier this year, it redirected our efforts toward addressing immediate needs for the institution. So that's where we had to pay greatest amount of attention to address and remediate needs for our faculty, staff, and students. We've reached a point where we've been able to now revisit this topic. And at this point, we're looking to do a HANA 2.0 upgrade, which is slated to occur in the coming months. And that will put us on the path for S4HANA. That's something that we are still restarting our conversations on, because a year later, for me and you, it's a familiar topic. For those outside of IT, the details of the conversation may have slipped off a little bit. And so it requires us to revisit that. And we're re-engaging with vendors in the space, partners and such, to start that back up. Some of the things you mentioned too, in terms of acceleration of projects and speed to implementation, that's a real thing too. The continuously changing landscape of technology, new products and services continuously popping up, and each one offering different values. And in order for us to remain competitive, not only are we watching our competitors and acting or reacting or planning, we also have to then put these solutions in place quickly, expediently, so we can start to experience their benefits immediately. One of the things that we're looking at is, we're in the process of doing through our sandbox and then eventually into our production environment, is Fiori. And Fiori is SAP's UX experience, right? The user experience piece of it. It helps individuals access SAP solutions in a more fluid and dynamic and easily accessible solution, more readily available on any platform. So that's something we're slowly going through as well. One of the things that SAP offers us, I'll say, in terms of this pandemic, we've all had to adapt and change, right? The platform also, through its flexibility, allows us to adapt and change with it. Where we were able to do things that we hadn't planned on. things that came up, questions that surfaced, and asks that came our way that said, are you able to provide this information or create this type of a solution for our institution? And our basic response is that if you can explain it, we can build it, right? And that's the approach we've been taking. And it allows for an amicable outcome. We're able to deliver what the institution is looking for. The faculty, staff, and students get what they need to continue their experiences in this space.
Any other thoughts, kind of, wrap up thoughts, Lohit, Nishant, any final thoughts that have come to mind as we've been discussing this, or points you'd like to raise?
I can share a quick thought on the point you brought up about digitalization, and the digital transformation. And, now is our chance as institutions to take that leap, right? We've typically been apprehensive in moving our technology initiatives forward as much as we've needed to, because we've had other priorities. When you're meeting in person and you have traditional classroom setups, the technology needs, you can work around them. In this new modern era, or in this post-pandemic era that we'll eventually get to, we don't know what that final state looks like. So plan, prepare, and have something ready, so when you do face whatever that challenge is, you're prepared with a solution. When the pandemic began, right, we were all racing for laptops, cameras, webcams, and such, and the supply chain was dry. Everybody was out, right? The supply chain is starting to get repopulated with all of the equipment. So now's a chance to take advantage of it, plan, do the things you need to, and try to stay ahead so you're not on the same procurement cycle as everybody else, and you're all fighting for the same thing at the same time, and having to, somebody has to be without it at that point if you end up with that. So we've experienced enough that we should have good insight to be able to plan a little bit ahead, is my parting words. Thank you, Malcolm.